The crack of a gunshot echoed through Sweetwater Creek as Olivia Fletcher ducked behind an overturned wagon, her heart pounding against her ribs like a wild stallion. The year was 1876, and what should have been a routine journey west had turned into a nightmare when bandits ambushed their wagon train just outside the Colorado Territory. With her family's belongings scattered across the dusty trail, and the rest of the travelers either dead or fled, Olivia found herself utterly alone for the first time in her 22 years of existence. Blood trickled down her temple where a stray bullet had grazed her, but it was nothing compared to the emptiness spreading through her chest. Everything she had, everyone she loved, gone in the blink of an eye. Her parents had stayed back east, promising to follow once she and her brother established their homestead. Now her brother James lay dead among the sagebrush, and their dream of a new beginning had died with him. Another shot rang out, splintering wood inches from her face. She bit back a scream, pressing her body deeper into the dirt. The bandits were still out there, searching for survivors, for valuables, for sport. Olivia clutched the small derringer her father had insisted she carry, a lady's gun with just 2 shots. She'd never fired it at a person before. Come out, a gruff voice called. "We know someone's still alive out there." Olivia closed her eyes, tears streaming down her dirt-stained face. She'd never felt so hollow, so devoid of hope. If they found her, God only knew what they'd do before they killed her too. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her heart sink further, but these came from the opposite direction of the bandits' voices. Through a crack in the wagon's broken sideboards, she saw a rider approaching fast, silhouetted against the setting sun. His horse kicked up clouds of dust as he rode straight toward the ambush site. The bandits turned their attention to the newcomer, but before they could raise their weapons, the stranger had drawn his pistol with lightning speed. 3 shots rang out in quick succession, and 2 of the outlaws dropped. The third managed to fire back before a 4th shot from the stranger's gun silenced him forever. For a moment, the only sound was the wind whistling through the canyon. Olivia remained frozen, unsure if this man was savior or just another threat. Her fingers tightened around the derringer as booted footsteps approached her hiding spot. "Anyone alive out there?" The voice was deep but gentle, nothing like the bandits' harsh tones. "I'm not here to hurt you." Despite her fear, something in his voice compelled Olivia to respond. "Here," she croaked, her throat dry from dust and terror. The stranger rounded the wagon, and Olivia got her first clear look at him. Tall and broad-shouldered, he wore the practical attire of a working cowboy, worn denim, leather vest, and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed eyes as blue as the Montana sky. A deputy star glinted on his chest, catching the last rays of sunlight. "Name's Zachary Aldridge," he said, holstering his weapon and crouching beside her. "Deputy from Silver Creek, about 20 miles west. We got word of bandits hitting wagon trains in these parts." "You're too late," Olivia whispered, gesturing to the carnage around them. "They killed everyone." "Not everyone," he replied, his eyes softening as they took in her bloodied face. "You're still breathing." He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movements so as not to startle her, and examined the wound on her temple. His touch was surprisingly gentle for hands so weathered. Just a graze. "You're lucky." Lucky wasn't the word Olivia would have chosen. "My brother's dead, our wagon's destroyed, everything we owned was in it." "I'm sorry about your brother, madam, but possessions can be replaced, lives can't." He offered her a canteen. "Drink." "Then we need to move before more of their gang shows up." The water tasted like life itself sliding down her parched throat. "Where will we go?" "Silver Creek. It's the nearest town with a doctor who can look at that wound proper." He glanced at the darkening sky. "We should make camp soon, though." It's not safe to travel these trails after dark. Zachary helped her to her feet, steadying her when she swayed slightly. The reality of her situation crashed down on her. She was alone in a strange territory with nothing but the clothes on her back and a strange man as her only protection. Yet something about his steady presence calmed the storm raging inside her. "I need to bury my brother," she said firmly, finding strength she didn't know she still possessed. Zachary nodded, understanding in his eyes. "We'll do it proper." Using a shovel salvaged from the wreckage, Zachary dug a grave while Olivia gathered what few personal items she could find scattered across the trail: her locket containing a family portrait, James's pocket watch, the letter of introduction to the land office in Denver. Then together, they laid James to rest as the first stars appeared in the evening sky. Olivia recited what she could remember of the Lord's Prayer, her voice breaking several times. "He was all I had out here," she admitted as they stood over the fresh mound of earth. "We were going to build something together." "What's your name?" Zachary asked softly. "Olivia. Olivia Fletcher." "Well, Miss Fletcher, if you'll allow it, I'll see you safely to Silver Creek. From there, we can send a telegram to your folks back east." The mention of her parents brought a fresh wave of grief. "They saved for years to send us out here. How can I tell them their son is dead and their dream is finished?" "One step at a time," Zachary replied, leading her toward his horse. "First, we get somewhere safe." He helped her mount before swinging up behind her, his arms forming a protective circle as he took the reins. Despite her grief, Olivia was acutely aware of the solid warmth of his chest against her back as they rode away from the site of her brother's death and into an uncertain future. They made camp in a sheltered hollow about 5 miles from the ambush site. Zachary built a small fire, carefully shielded to prevent its light from attracting unwanted attention. From his saddlebags, he produced jerky and hardtack simple trail food, but Olivia found she was ravenous despite her grief. "How long have you been a deputy?" she asked, desperate for conversation to keep her thoughts from spiraling back to James's lifeless body. "About 3 years," Zachary replied, feeding small twigs into the fire. "Before that, I was just another cowhand drifting from ranch to ranch, never stayed in one place too long." His eyes reflected the dancing flames. "What about you? What brought you out to these parts?" "Land," Olivia said simply. 200 acres near the Front Range. My brother was going to raise horses and I was going to establish a school." She laughed bitterly. "I'm a teacher, or was, back in Pennsylvania." "Still are," Zachary corrected. "Silver Creek's got plenty of young'uns in need of learning. No proper school yet, though." The idea that she might still have something to offer in this harsh land was a tiny spark of hope in the darkness. "Is it a decent town?" "Decent enough. Growing fast with the mines nearby." "Got a general store, hotel, couple saloons. Doctor's a good man, served as an army surgeon during the war." He poured her a cup of coffee from the pot heating by the fire's edge. "It's no Philadelphia, but it's home." "I've never been to Philadelphia," Olivia admitted, accepting the tin cup. "We're from a small town near Pittsburgh. This is the farthest west I've ever been." "Well, the West is big country, plenty of room for starting over." He hesitated, then added softly, "Plenty of room for dreams that don't die with loved ones." Olivia stared into her coffee, tears welling again. "Right now, I feel like I have nothing left." "You have your life," Zachary said firmly, "and that's a foundation to build on." They fell into silence, the crackling fire and distant howl of coyotes the only sounds breaking the night's stillness. Olivia found herself studying her rescuer's face in the firelight, the strong jawline softened by a few days' growth of beard, the small scar near his right eye that suggested stories yet untold, the way his expression remained alert even in repose. "You should get some sleep," he said, catching her gaze. "I'll keep watch." "I doubt I could sleep if I tried," she replied honestly. "At least rest. Tomorrow will be a long day of riding." He offered her his bedroll, and though she protested initially, exhaustion won out. As she lay down, pulling the rough wool blanket around her shoulders, Olivia realized she trusted this stranger more than she probably should. Perhaps it was simply that in a world suddenly devoid of certainty, Zachary Aldridge represented safety, a port in the storm her life had become. Just before sleep claimed her, she whispered, "Thank you for finding me." His response came soft through the darkness. "Sometimes, Miss Fletcher, the best things in life are found when we're not looking for them." Morning brought stiff muscles and renewed grief, but also a strange determination that had settled in Olivia's heart overnight. As they broke camp and prepared to continue their journey, she found herself watching Zachary with new eyes. In the harsh light of day, she could see that he was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps only a few years older than her own 22 years, but with the weathered look of a man who'd lived hard. "How far to Silver Creek?" she asked as he helped her mount his horse. "We should make it by midday if we push on." He swung up behind her again, reaching around to take the reins. "There's a creek about an hour's ride from here where we can water the horse and freshen up a bit." The morning was spent in companionable silence as they rode through rolling foothills covered in scrub brush and scattered pine. Occasionally, Zachary would point out landmarks or signs of wildlife, a hawk circling overhead, tracks of deer crossing their path, the distant silhouette of mountains that marked the territorial divide. Olivia tried to absorb it all, finding that focusing on the unfamiliar landscape helped keep her grief at bay. True to his word, they stopped at a clear running creek where columbine flowers grew in clusters along the banks. Zachary dismounted first, then offered his hand to help Olivia down. The simple contact sent an unexpected warmth through her fingers. "There's soap in my saddlebag," he said, gesturing to a leather pouch. "I'll give you some privacy to wash up." Grateful for his consideration, Olivia waited until he'd walked a discreet distance away before kneeling by the creek. She removed the blood-stained neckerchief she'd been wearing and washed her face and hands in the cool water, wincing as she cleaned the wound at her temple. Her reflection in the water's surface was almost unrecognizable, hollow-eyed and pale, with her auburn hair falling loose from its pins. Using Zachary's small shaving mirror, she did her best to make herself presentable, rebraiding her hair and straightening her torn blouse. The simple acts of grooming helped restore a sense of normalcy, however fleeting. When she rejoined Zachary, he was filling their canteens. "Feeling better?" he asked. "As well as can be expected," she replied honestly. "How much further to Silver Creek?" "About 3 hours' ride. We'll follow this creek a ways, then cut north through Cottonwood Pass." He handed her a strip of jerky from his provisions. "Not much of a breakfast, I'm afraid." "I'm not particularly hungry." It wasn't entirely true, but the gnawing in her stomach seemed trivial compared to everything else she'd lost. Zachary frowned slightly. "You need to keep up your strength, Miss Fletcher. Grief has a way of hollowing a person out if you let it." The simple observation struck her deeply. "Is that the voice of experience talking, Deputy Aldridge?" A shadow crossed his face. "Let's just say I understand what it means to lose family suddenly." Before she could ask more, he was helping her back onto the horse, and they were moving again, following the winding path of the creek through increasingly rugged country. The terrain grew steeper, and Zachary guided his mount expertly up narrow switchback trails that made Olivia's heart race with every look down at the drop-offs beside them. "The miners cut these trails," he explained when she gasped at a particularly sharp turn. "Not the safest routes, but the quickest. Don't worry, Samson here has made this trip 100 times." As if in response, the sturdy bay gelding snorted and continued his sure-footed climb. "You trust this horse with your life," Olivia observed. "Out here, your horse is often the difference between living and dying," Zachary replied. "A good horse, a good gun, and good sense, that's what keeps a man breathing in these parts." "And what about women?" she asked, a touch of defiance coloring her tone. She felt rather than saw his smile. "Women out west need all that and more. Takes a special kind of strength to carve out a life in these territories." "I'm not sure I have that kind of strength," Olivia admitted, thinking of the dreams that had shattered with her brother's death. "You survived an ambush that killed everyone else in your party," Zachary said firmly. "I'd say that's evidence enough of your strength, Miss Fletcher." His confidence in her was both comforting and unsettling. They'd known each other less than a day, yet he spoke as if he could see something in her that she couldn't see herself. As they crested the pass, Silver Creek came into view in the valley below a collection of wooden buildings straddling a wide creek that glittered in the midday sun. Smoke rose from chimneys, and Olivia could make out tiny figures moving about the main street. It was smaller than she'd imagined, certainly nothing like the bustling towns back east, but in that moment, it represented safety and civilization. "Home sweet home," Zachary said, a note of genuine affection in his voice. "It's not much to look at, but the people are decent, most of them anyway." The descent into town was quicker than the climb had been, and soon they were riding down the main street, drawing curious glances from townsfolk going about their business. Olivia felt suddenly self-conscious of her disheveled appearance and the fact that she was sharing a saddle with the deputy. Zachary guided them directly to a whitewashed building with a sign reading Dr. Henry Wilson, physician and surgeon. He dismounted first, then reached up to help Olivia down. Her legs were stiff from the long ride, and she stumbled slightly, falling against his chest. His hand steadied her at the waist, lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary. "Let's get that wound looked at proper," he said, his voice rougher than before. The doctor was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a meticulously trimmed beard. He listened gravely as Zachary explained the circumstances that had brought Olivia to Silver Creek. "A terrible business," Dr. Wilson said, examining her temple. "These bandit attacks have been increasing. The territorial governors promising more marshals, but they're spread thin." He cleaned her wound with an antiseptic that stung fiercely. "You're lucky, Miss Fletcher. Another inch to the right and we wouldn't be having this conversation." "So I've been told," Olivia replied, wincing as he applied a fresh bandage. "She'll need a place to stay," Zachary said. "And some new clothes. Mrs. Holbrook at the boarding house usually has a room," the doctor suggested. "And I believe her daughter is about your size, Miss Fletcher. She might be willing to part with some garments for a fair price." "I haven't any money," Olivia said, embarrassment heating her cheeks. "Everything was in the wagon." "I'll cover it," Zachary said firmly. "Consider it an advance from the town." "I couldn't possibly. Silver Creek needs a teacher," he interrupted. "Consider it an investment in the town's future." Dr. Wilson smiled at this exchange. "Deputy Aldridge rarely takes no for an answer, Miss Fletcher. You might as well save your breath for arguments you can win." After leaving the doctor's office, Zachary escorted Olivia to the Silver Creek Hotel and Boarding House, a two-story structure at the quieter end of town. Mrs. Holbrook, the proprietress, was a widow in her 50s with shrewd eyes and a businesslike manner that softened when Zachary explained Olivia's situation. "Poor dear," she said, patting Olivia's hand. "Terrible thing to lose family that way. You'll stay here as long as needed." She shot a meaningful glance at Zachary. And I trust the town will cover her expenses until she's on her feet. Consider it done, Zachary assured her. Mayor Jensen will approve it at the next council meeting. Olivia wanted to protest this charity, but exhaustion was overtaking her. The events of the past day, the ambush, her brother's death, the long ride to Silver Creek were catching up with her all at once. Mrs. Holbrook seemed to sense this. Betsy will show you to your room and bring up some hot water for washing. I'll have my daughter Rebecca sort out some clothes for you. She shooed Zachary toward the door. The girl needs rest, Deputy. Your questions can wait until tomorrow. Zachary nodded, tipping his hat to Olivia. I'll check on you in the morning, Miss Fletcher. Thank you, she managed, the words inadequate for all he'd done. For everything. After he left, Olivia followed the maid upstairs to a small but clean room with a narrow bed, washstand, and chest of drawers. A window overlooked the creek that gave the town its name. The sound of running water was soothing, almost hypnotic, true to Mrs. Holbrook's word. Hot water and a simple cotton nightgown were brought up. Olivia bathed as best she could in the small basin, changed into the borrowed garment, and sank onto the bed. Despite her earlier conviction that she wouldn't be able to sleep, exhaustion pulled her under almost immediately. She dreamed of James, of the bandits, of blood on the dusty trail. But interwoven with these nightmares were glimpses of blue eyes and the solid warmth of arms around her, keeping her safe as they rode through dangerous country. When she woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the window, and someone had placed a folded stack of clothing on the chair beside her bed. A note in a feminine hand read, "These belonged to my daughter before she married and moved to Denver. They should fit you well enough until you can have something made. Welcome to Silver Creek. Mrs. Holbrook." Grateful for the kindness of strangers, Olivia dressed in the simple calico dress and shawl. Both were slightly out of fashion but well made and clean. She braided her hair and pinned it up as neatly as she could without a proper mirror, then made her way downstairs. The boarding house dining room was empty except for Zachary, who stood when she entered. He'd clearly made an effort with his appearance. His shirt was clean, his hair neatly combed, his face freshly shaved. The transformation made him look younger, more approachable. "Good morning," he said, pulling out a chair for her. "Mrs. Holbrook saved you some breakfast. What time is it?" Olivia asked, realizing she had no idea how long she'd slept. "Just past 10. You needed the rest." He poured her a cup of coffee from the pot on the table. "How are you feeling?" "Better, thank you." She sipped the coffee, stronger than she was used to, but welcome nonetheless. "Has there been any word about the bandits?" Sheriff rode out at dawn with a posse. "They'll check the ambush site, see if they can pick up any tracks." His expression darkened. "These aren't ordinary outlaws, Miss Fletcher. They're organized, hitting wagon trains and stagecoaches all across the territory. The army's been called in, but they're focused on Indian troubles further north." A plate of eggs and biscuits appeared before her, delivered by Mrs. Holbrook herself. "Eat up, dear. You're much too thin." Olivia hadn't realized how hungry she was until the food was in front of her. She ate with more appetite than she would have thought possible, given the circumstances. "I sent a telegram to the land office in Denver," Zachary said as she ate. "The claim you and your brother filed is still valid. As his next of kin, you have rights to the property." Olivia paused, fork halfway to her mouth. "I hadn't even thought about the land." 200 acres along the Front Range, he confirmed. "Good water rights according to the land office, valuable property." "I don't know the first thing about ranching," she said, feeling overwhelmed by the prospect. "James was the one with the knowledge of horses. I was just going to teach." "You have options," Zachary said. "You could sell the claim, or hire someone to work it for you while you establish your school." He hesitated, then added, "Or you could return east. Your family would understand, given what happened. The thought of giving up and returning home in defeat struck something stubborn in Olivia's heart. No, I came west for a reason. James believed in what we were doing. She set down her fork with newfound resolve. I won't dishonor his memory by abandoning our dream. A smile spread across Zachary's face, transforming his features. I was hoping you'd say that. After breakfast, Zachary offered to show Olivia around Silver Creek. The town was indeed small, one main street with a few side alleys, perhaps 30 buildings in all, but it had all the essentials. General store, blacksmith, livery stable, hotel, 2 saloons, a small church, and the sheriff's office where Zachary worked. We've grown a lot in the past 2 years, he explained as they walked. Silver strike in the hills brought in miners, and they need supplies, entertainment, and education for their children, Olivia added, noting several young ones playing in the dusty street. Exactly. The town council's been talking about building a proper schoolhouse, but we need a teacher first. He glanced sideways at her. Would you consider taking the position, at least temporarily, while you decide what to do about your land claim? The offer was tempting. Teaching was what she knew, what she loved. I'd need supplies, books. The town can provide those. Pay wouldn't be much at first, but it would be enough to live on. As they discussed the possibilities, they approached a large tent set up at the edge of town. The sound of a woman singing floated out, accompanied by a slightly out-of-tune piano. The traveling show arrived yesterday, Zachary explained. They come through every few months, brings a bit of culture to our little town. Curious, Olivia peered inside. A dozen or so wooden chairs faced a small stage where a woman in a faded blue dress was singing a popular ballad. Her voice was surprisingly lovely, filling the humble space with emotion that transcended the surroundings. She's good, Olivia whispered, feeling a tug of homesickness for the concerts and theater performances she'd enjoyed back east. Miss Madeline Pearl, Zachary said, been traveling with this show for years. Story goes she was headed for San Francisco to sing in a real opera house, but never made it past Colorado. There was something in his tone that made Olivia glance up at him. You admire her, she observed. I admire anyone who brings beauty to harsh places, he replied, meeting her eyes directly. It takes courage to do that. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Olivia wasn't ready to name. She looked away first, her heart beating faster than it should. The singer finished her song to enthusiastic applause from the small audience. As people began filing out, Zachary touched Olivia's elbow lightly. There's someone I'd like you to meet, he said, guiding her toward a man standing near the makeshift stage. Judge Parker handles legal matters for the county. He can help you with your brother's affairs. Judge Parker was an imposing figure with silver hair and a neatly trimmed beard. He listened solemnly as Zachary introduced Olivia and explained her situation. A terrible tragedy, Miss Fletcher. You have my sincere condolences. The judge's voice was deep and resonant, clearly accustomed to commanding courtrooms. Deputy Aldridge is right to bring this matter to my attention. There are legal procedures to follow regarding your brother's property and personal effects. I don't even know where to begin, Olivia admitted. Let's start with documenting what happened. I'll need a formal statement from you about the ambush. He glanced at Zachary. Has the sheriff returned yet? Not as of this morning. Should be back by nightfall, the judge nodded. Good. We'll coordinate with him on the investigation. To Olivia, he added, in the meantime, I'll draw up the necessary paperwork to secure your claim on your brother's estate. Do you have any documentation with you? Letters from the land office, perhaps? Just what I could salvage from the wagon, Olivia said, reaching into the pocket of her borrowed dress where she'd placed her few remaining possessions. "Our letter of introduction to the Denver Land Office and the claim deed." Judge Parker examined the papers. "These will help. I'll need to verify a few details, but it appears everything is in order for you to inherit the property." He returned the documents. "Keep these safe, Miss Fletcher. Land is the most valuable asset in these territories." As they left the tent, Olivia felt a mix of emotions, grief still predominant, but now complicated by practical concerns and decisions that needed to be made. She was both overwhelmed and strangely empowered by having some control over her future again. "The judge is a good man," Zachary said as they walked back toward the main street. "Fair-minded. He'll make sure everything's handled properly." "I appreciate you introducing us," Olivia replied, suddenly aware of how much she had come to rely on this man she barely knew. "In fact, I appreciate all you've done. I don't know how I can ever repay you." Zachary stopped walking, turning to face her directly. "You don't owe me anything, Miss Fletcher. I was just doing my duty." "It seems to me you've gone well beyond duty," she said softly. Something flickered in his eyes and emotion quickly controlled. "Maybe so," he admitted, "but some people are worth the extra effort." Before Olivia could respond, a commotion from the direction of the sheriff's office caught their attention. Men on horseback were riding into town at a gallop, dust billowing behind them. "The posse is back," Zachary said, his posture instantly alert. "Stay here." But Olivia followed as he strode quickly toward the gathering crowd. The sheriff, a weathered man with a drooping mustache, was dismounting as they approached. His expression was grim. "What news, Sheriff?" Zachary called. "Found the wagon train, just like you said," the sheriff replied, removing his hat to wipe sweat from his brow. "Buried the bodies we found. Tracked the bandits about 10 miles northwest before losing the trail in the rocks." He noticed Olivia. "This the survivor, Olivia Fletcher," Zachary confirmed. "Miss Fletcher, this is Sheriff Tanner." "Madam," the sheriff acknowledged with a respectful nod. "Sorry about your brother. We'll do everything we can to bring these murderers to justice." "Did you find any clues about who they might be?" Olivia asked, steeling herself against the renewed grief. "Nothing definite," Sheriff Tanner said, "but their methods match those of the Carson gang. Been terrorizing the territory for months now." He turned to Zachary. "Found this, though." He handed over a tarnished silver pocket watch. "Figured it might belong to her kin." Olivia gasped as Zachary placed the watch in her palm. "It was James's," she confirmed, tears welling. "Our father gave it to him when we left Pittsburgh." She opened the case to reveal the inscription. "To James Fletcher, may time be kind, father." The small connection to her lost brother was overwhelmingly precious. "Thank you," she whispered. Sheriff Tanner cleared his throat, uncomfortable with her emotion. "Deputy Aldridge need a word with you." He glanced meaningfully at Olivia. "Official business." Zachary nodded. "Miss Fletcher, would you mind waiting for me at the hotel? Shouldn't be long." Though curious about what official business might entail, Olivia respected the request. Clutching James's pocket watch, she made her way back to the boarding house, her mind swirling with memories of her brother and the future that now seemed both impossible and somehow more necessary than ever. Mrs. Holbrook was sweeping the front porch when Olivia arrived. "There you are, dear. A letter came for you while you were out." She handed over an envelope. "Telegraph rider brought it from Fort Collins." Puzzled, Olivia examined the letter. It was addressed simply to Miss O. Fletcher, care of Silver Creek Township, with no return address. Breaking the seal, she unfolded the single sheet of paper and read the brief message. "Miss Fletcher, I represent interests that would like to purchase your land claim immediately. Can offer $500 cash." Will arrive Silver Creek within the week to discuss terms. Respectfully, J. Morrison, Morrison Land and Cattle Co. $500 was a substantial sum enough to return east in comfort or establish herself properly in Colorado. But something about the letter's timing and tone raised her suspicions. How had this Morrison even known she was in Silver Creek? The land claim was in both her and James's names, but their destination had been Denver, not this small mining town. She was still pondering this question when Zachary returned, his expression troubled. He spotted her on the porch and quickened his pace. "Everything all right?" she asked as he approached. "Sheriff's concerned about the Carson gang," he replied, keeping his voice low. "Information suggests they might not be done with your wagon train's cargo." "What do you mean?" Zachary glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. "One of the dead bandits had a map marking your land claim. Sheriff thinks they weren't just random outlaws, they were after your property specifically." Olivia's blood ran cold. She showed him the letter that had just arrived. Could this be connected? Zachary read it quickly, his frown deepening. "Morrison Land and Cattle is owned by William Carson's brother-in-law, and $500 is far below market value for prime land with water rights. You think the same people who killed my brother are now trying to buy our land?" The idea was horrifying. It fits. They eliminate the legitimate claimants, then swoop in to buy the property at a fraction of its worth from survivors desperate to leave the territory. His jaw tightened. "It's happened before." "What should I do?" Olivia asked, fear mingling with a growing anger. "Don't sell, for starters," Zachary advised. "And don't let anyone know you've connected these dots. If Morrison arrives in town, act interested but non-committal." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "In the meantime, we need to get you out to your land to establish physical presence on the claim. It strengthens your legal position." "Is that safe? If these people killed James for the land, not alone, it isn't," Zachary said firmly. "But I'll go with you, and we'll bring along a few others I trust." His eyes held her steadily. "I won't let anything happen to you, Olivia, that's a promise." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the intimacy of it sent an unexpected warmth through her despite the dire circumstances. In that moment, standing on the boarding house porch with the afternoon sun slanting across his determined face, Zachary Aldridge represented safety in a world that had suddenly become treacherous again. "When do we leave?" she asked, her resolve strengthening. "Tomorrow at first light. Pack only what you need for a few days." He squeezed her shoulder gently before releasing it. "And Olivia, you're not alone in this fight." The promise sustained her through a restless night filled with anxious dreams. By dawn, Olivia was dressed in the practical clothing Mrs. Holbrook had provided: a simple skirt, blouse, and sturdy boots more suited to frontier life than the fashionable attire she'd worn back east. She braided her hair tightly and covered it with a wide-brimmed hat for protection from the sun. Zachary was waiting outside with 3 horses his own mount, a gentle-looking mare for Olivia, and a pack horse laden with supplies. He wasn't alone. A young man with dark hair and a quick smile stood beside him. "Morning, Miss Fletcher," Zachary greeted her. "This is Charlie Redmond, best tracker in the county and a friend I trust with my life." Charlie tipped his hat politely. "Madam, sorry about your brother." "Thank you for coming, Mr. Redmond. Call me Charlie, everyone does." He gestured to the horses. "That's Daisy you'll be riding. She's steady as they come, won't give you any trouble." Olivia approached the mare cautiously. She'd ridden occasionally back home, but never for the distances they'd be covering today. The horse nickered softly as she stroked its neck. "We should reach your land by midday if we keep a good pace," Zachary said, helping her mount. "Judge Parker gave me copies of your claim documents, Everything's in order legally. Their route took them west from Silver Creek, following game trails through increasingly rugged country. Charlie rode ahead, alert for any signs of trouble, while Zachary stayed close to Olivia, occasionally pointing out landmarks or wildlife. Despite the serious purpose of their journey, Olivia found herself marveling at the wild beauty of the landscape, towering pines, meadows bursting with wildflowers, dramatic rock formations unlike anything she'd seen in Pennsylvania. "It's beautiful," she commented as they paused to water the horses at a small stream. "Different kind of beautiful than back east," Zachary agreed, handing her a canteen. "Harsher maybe, but more honest." "Is that why you stayed, after you finished drifting?" A smile touched his lips. "Partly. This country gets in your blood, but mostly it was the folks building something from nothing, helping each other through hard times." He looked at her thoughtfully. "You'd understand that, I think. You're a builder too, in your own way." "A teacher," she corrected. "Teachers build minds." "That's more lasting than any barn or fence." Before Olivia could respond, Charlie returned from scouting ahead. "We're getting close to the claim boundary," he reported. "Another couple miles and we'll hit the north fork of the creek that marks the eastern edge." As they rode on, anticipation built in Olivia's chest. This land had been the focus of so many conversations with James, so many plans and dreams. Seeing it for the first time without him felt both wrong and necessary. When they finally crested a gentle rise, and the full expanse of the Fletcher claim spread before them, Olivia's breath caught. A broad valley cradled between pine-covered hills, with a clear creek winding through meadows dotted with wildflowers. In the distance, the Front Range mountains rose majestically, their peaks still capped with snow even in late spring. "It's perfect," she whispered, unexpected tears filling her eyes. "James chose well." "The cabin site would be down there," Zachary said, pointing to a level area near the creek, sheltered by a stand of cottonwoods. "Good location, protected from winter winds, close to water." They rode down to the spot he'd indicated. Though no structures had been built yet, it was easy to imagine what might have been and what still could be. A home, a barn, a corral for horses. A school, perhaps, as the area grew more settled. Charlie dismounted first, moving in a wide circle around the site, examining the ground carefully. "Someone's been here recently," he reported. "Boot prints, maybe 3 or 4 men, few days old." Zachary's hand moved instinctively to his holstered pistol. "Carson's men, most likely, scoping the property." "What do we do?" Olivia asked, suddenly feeling exposed in the open valley. "We make camp," Zachary decided. "Establish our presence. Charlie and I will take turns keeping watch tonight." They set about making a temporary camp, gathering firewood and unsaddling the horses. Zachary showed Olivia how to picket the animals so they could graze without wandering off. Charlie disappeared briefly, returning with 2 rabbits he'd snared for their supper. As darkness fell, they sat around the small fire, the enormity of the empty land around them emphasized by the silence broken only by night creatures and the crackling flames. What would James have built first? Zachary asked, passing Olivia a tin cup of coffee. The question brought a sad smile to her lips. "The barn, probably. He always said take care of your animals first, then